May had a record jobs growth month, right? Well, not so fast. America continues to reopen and the rules and norms are now starting to change. And we're also going to discuss the number one trait that you need to be prepared to talk about if you're getting ready for an interview. My name is Tony Martin, and this is How to Get the Jobs Weekly Update. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. Again, I write a blog called How to Get the Job. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, what's the other one? YouTube. So feel free, if you like this content, be sure to share it with your friends. Be sure to share it with anybody you think might benefit from it. And as always, I work to help people. I work to help show people how to get the job. Today we're going to discuss three things before we get to your Q&A. So if none of these three things are of interest to you, hang in there, because the Q&A is your opportunity to ask any specific question that you have going on in your current hiring process that you think you need some guidance with, and I'll give you some help in those areas. So first, unemployment numbers, right? I want to discuss that. I want to discuss how hiring is changing, and I also want to discuss the number one trait you need to know that is peppered throughout every interview process. And if you're not aware of this, you're at a serious disadvantage. But first, let's talk about the May employment number. So last week, when I ended on Thursday, on Friday, I was excited. Like most people, we gained 2.5 million jobs in this country. That's good news. But I was kind of annoyed that I had just done this whole show on Thursday, and then the numbers came out Friday, and I had to wait a whole week to talk about it. But in retrospect, it seems like that might have been a good thing, because a lot has happened in 7 days or 6 days since these numbers came out. And there seems to be a lot of controversy and confusion around these numbers. So I thought it was going to be important to first discuss a little bit how these numbers are aggregated and how they come up with it. Because truthfully, if you're like me, you thought, at least I thought, well, you get 62 million people in the labor force. Well, that's like 0.24%, 0.23%. So it can't quite be that simple. And it's not, unfortunately. So I'm just going to break it down as easy as I can, so that way it's not so mundane, but at least it gives you a little overview. The backbone of how we get states, so we can really make sure at the end of the day that we're not just surveying everyone in New York City. We're surveying people across the entire country as accurately as possible. So that's how they first do it, and then they break it up into regions. And then they call those homes every month for 4 months in a row, and the way it works is that they roll off 1/4 of those homes. So today, June, they're going to survey 60,000 homes. Next month, they'll survey the same 45,000 homes and 15,000 new homes. Then the next month, original 30,000 homes, so they'll keep on rolling through 1/4 of the group. So after 4 months, not the same home is being surveyed again that was 4 months earlier, so no home is being surveyed for more than 4 months. Then 8 months later, they start the process over again with those same 60,000 households. And then once they fall off the rolls one more time, they're gone forever. But that's kind of how they figure it out. And what they've determined is that by doing this, they can get within 0.18% accuracy of what the US Census would do. Because to be honest, we have 160 million people in the labor force. That means there's 160 million people who are either able to work and working, or able to work and looking for a work job and aren't working. So you can't survey 162 million people a month, and then you add that there's 7 million businesses roughly that are hiring people. So you can't do that monthly. So this is kind of how they came up with it. And then there's the numbers, the U2, U3, U4, U5, U6 numbers. We use U3 numbers, and really it's an aggregate of people, okay? If you are currently looking for a job and unemployed and collecting benefits, they kind of categorize you as a U3. That's what our numbers are based on. So that's a boring way to say, when I read this Forbes article, I got very confused. And I'm not a smart guy, just to be honest with you. I know what I know, but the more I read the article, the more confused I got. And that's why I had to dig in and actually do some research about how we come up with these labor statistics. So the May's job, so here's the title from the Forbes article. And again, my job is not to be a political advocate for the left or for the right. My job is just to tell you what this article said and then back it up with the facts that I've researched. So the article's headlines, and I'm going to read it to you. The May jobs report. U.S. may be at 20% unemployment. Now, that would make me think that when it was reported that the U.S. was at 13.3% for May, that was reported just last Friday, that they might be 7% off because it sounds like we should be at 20% based on the title. But when you read the article, the very first thing it says is that the US probably was at 16.1% in May and 19.5% in April, which is what? Which is still a job growth month. But it was confusing the way it was written. It doesn't sound like, after you read the article, that May's numbers were 20%. It sounds like April's numbers were 20%. So let's talk about where the confusion was, because the report was we went from 14.7 to 13.3. Forbes magazine was saying, or Forbes article was saying that we went from being at 19.5 to 16.1. Still a growth. But here's where the confusion lies, and here's where nothing is perfect in this world, right? And unemployment, when you do it, there's a question. So when you're doing the survey that we just talked about, when they call your house or you show up somewhere and they do the survey in person, they ask you, are you temporarily laid off? Traditionally speaking, temporarily layoff has always meant employed. It doesn't mean you're unemployed. It means you're temporarily laid off because it's temporary. You're going to come back. However, when the government shuts down your business and they say it's for 2 weeks, you tell your employees, all right, you're furloughed, you're temporarily laid off. And then 2 weeks comes and goes, and then the government says, hey, nope, you're still closed for 2 more weeks. All right, we're still closed 2 more weeks. And then 2 more weeks come. And then I think in New York City, they're up to 11 or 12 weeks of being closed. Guess what? Your temporary became permanent. And that's kind of what happened here. Those people probably should have been counted as permanent, even though historically speaking, we've always counted those people as temporary. So that's kind of where the numbers differed, okay? So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. Hopefully that clears up some confusion. But the truth is that we still had job growth last month, and that's a really good thing. And hopefully we can keep that going, even though there are signs right now that we're getting more flare-ups with Corona. But let's be honest, we never shut down to stop the flare-ups. We knew we were going to get it, or people were going to get it. We shut down the businesses and companies and country so we wouldn't exceed our medical capacity. So I think it's foolish now for us to change the goalposts and hope that, businesses have to not open so we can keep everyone safe. So anyway, got a little political there, but this is really about jobs and we need to get people hired. So that was our unemployment discussion. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about how the market has changed, onboarding and hiring. We'll get to that number one trait that you need to know if you are getting ready to join the job force and what questions you need to be prepared to answer. And then as always, we'll get to our Q&A. So if you have a question, again, type it in the comments, get ready to push send when we get to the Q&A because I think it'll be valuable and worth your time. So if you've watched this before, you know I like a guy by the name of Andrew Seaman. I think he needs to pay me because I'm always promoting his stuff. He works for LinkedIn, so let's be honest. You work for LinkedIn, you're going to have a lot of data. And he does. And he's been able to reach out to recruiters across the country, all industries, and ask them for their feelings and their feedback. And what are they doing as businesses to offset the negative stuff of Corona, but also get ready to hire and things like that. So there's a whole bunch of topics here that are being discussed. And I shared some of this article on Facebook. So if you're subscribed to my Facebook, you should have seen some of those articles yesterday. But first of all, if you're going back in the job force, be aware that career fairs, they're different. We're now doing virtual career fairs. And much like the way a lot of corporate cultures are changing, I know a lot of corporate cultures were cultures of you can't work from home. Because they just don't believe in it, this pandemic has forced them into allowing people to work from home. And when the walls haven't crumbled and the business is still operating, I think we're going to be coming out of this with a lot of people working from home still and companies downsizing their footprints. But on the job fair side, I think the same thing. I think that right now we're going to have a lot of companies that are doing virtual career fairs. They're cheaper. You don't have to fly people in and out. There is challenges. You can't see people face to face. You can't shake their hand. But guess what? You can't shake their hand anyway right now if you had a real career fair. I think you probably could, but everyone might look at you kind of funny and you might get judged. So as a result, though, the career fairs are going to change. I think as a society, we are going to overcorrect and do all virtual career fairs. And then all of a sudden we're going to realize, well, there was some value in actually meeting people and going back to a large, not banquet hall, but a large kind of center, hotel lobby, things like that were career fairs. But for the time being, virtual career fairs are going to be the key. Interviews, they may be in person, obviously, or they may still be virtual. Actually today, one of my close friends is actually interviewing today face-to-face at the company. So there are protocols in place, okay? When you're interviewing face-to-face, realize that you want to ask them what their social distancing policies are. You want to be aware so you're not surprised. If you're not a mask wearer, you don't think you need to, totally fine in my opinion. This is a free country. But you want to ask the company, do you guys have a policy on this or whatever? And you certainly want to make sure your mask isn't a fashion statement and it isn't a political rally. You want to make sure your mask is a mask, period. Solid color, patterns are okay, but no slogans, nothing like that. I don't care what the slogan is. You don't want to give an employer a reason to think that you're going to be a social warrior, a crusader, or anything that's going to make their life stressful, okay? It's just a piece of clothing. Next, if you're doing online interviewing, because that's going to happen, right? It's already happening. It's happened before. It's going to happen after. Now, I do online mock interviews with my clients weekly. I will tell you the biggest stressor I have. So this is what you can do as a candidate if you're getting ready to do a Zoom interview or an online interview with one of your with a company. Naturally, you're going to go on there in advance to make sure that you know how to use the software, because guess what? If you're using your phone, sometimes you have to download the app before you can click the link for it to actually work, and it'd be terrible to figure that out at the exact time you need to use the app and realizing you need to download it. But do not do this. If your interview is at 1 o'clock, don't at 12 o'clock, exactly 1 hour before, log in to make sure everything works. Do it 73 minutes in advance. Do it 82 minutes in advance, but don't do it 60 minutes in advance, because what happens? I get a notification the moment you log in saying your attendees are waiting for the meeting. And I panic because I naturally think they're exactly 1 hour off. I must have screwed up the invite. I must have gotten the time zone wrong. So then I go searching and I go, nope, I didn't screw up time. But I get stressed out from the moment I have to leave whatever I was doing to go back here just to make sure I'm not messing up someone else's schedule. So my tip is, if you're doing a Zoom interview, online interview, make sure everything works in advance, but make sure it works either inside the hour or outside the hour, but not 1 hour exactly prior to the interview starting. Because people like me are doing other things and we're gonna get nervous that we screwed something up, because honestly, I screw up a lot of stuff. So that's that. And then the next thing was about onboarding and virtual onboarding. Very often now, your first day of work is gonna be at home. All your stuff is going to be shipped to your house. Your first day is a lot of paperwork, it's meeting people, but now you're going to do a lot of virtual meetings. So be prepared that your first day of work is going to be like that. And then make sure you bring your A game to the job search, because let's be honest, if there's something I've been harping on since I started doing this. Well, I've been recruiting people for 15 years. I've been leading teams for over 10 years. But there's something I've been harping on for the past few months. There are a lot of A players out there right now. There are a lot of people like you who are strong and talented looking for a job. So you need to have good understanding of what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. And when you're applying to a job, you need to be succinct as to why you can do that job and be good at it, because there's somebody else that's going to be more succinct if you're not intentionally trying to tell them why you're good at that job. All right, now it's time for your tip. The number one trait that you need to be prepared to talk about if you're getting ready to interview, and then we're going to get to your Q&A. So remember, Q&A, get them queued up if you got them. I have questions from this week from clients I'm already working with this week, but I'm gladly able to prioritize your questions ahead of the ones that I've already, some cases, answered live for my clients and then thought it was valuable to bring over here. The number one tip you need to be aware of, a number one trait you need to be aware of during the interview process, is you need to have an emotional intelligence trait called self-awareness. Every question that I ask has a flavor of self-awareness. So first, let me explain what self-awareness is. Self-awareness is your ability to understand how you impact those around you, whether it's intentional or unintentional. Most of the time, it's unintentional. That's why you be self-aware. Often, it's people you'll never even meet or people you don't even see. For example, you're getting ready to get on a plane. Remember when we could fly? Well, we can't fly right now. But when you could fly or wanted to fly, you'd get on a plane, and you finally get down the jetway and you're standing in front of your seat, but the guy in front of you needs to do all of his stuff. So he is holding you up. He's standing in the aisleway, getting his bag, remembering it's an international flight, so he's got to get his passport because customs are going to happen in 12 hours and he needs that passport now. He's doing all of these things over 30 to 45 seconds while you're just patiently waiting to get by him. And 200 of your friends are also trying to get by him. Now, He finally moves in and you move on. He has no idea, probably, how much of an inconvenience he was for you and everybody else in that row, most of which he'll never even see or notice. That person in the very, very back of the line. He has no self-awareness, okay? Or at least he's limiting his self-awareness in that moment, or he's choosing just to be a jerk. But either way, in that moment, his lack of self-awareness is evident to you. Why is this so important? If you don't have self-awareness, you're very often not aware of what you did or what the situation was to make you successful, okay? Often in interviewing, we focus on, well, if you were successful before, tell me about a time when you did something and you were successful, because we want to make sure that you can do it here. And most of the time, past behavior is an indication of future performance. However, if you have no self-awareness, your ability to duplicate successes is going to be extremely limited. I kind of think that it's almost like you can't guarantee success again, because perhaps, stay with me here, maybe you're kind of you're a sarcastic guy that's a tough personality, but you're really gruff. But in that company where you just had this tremendous success, you were surrounded by people like you who understood your personality. I'm from New England, okay? New Englanders, we have a certain personality and sense of humor that isn't always appreciated everywhere else. My wife had to tell me for many, many times, "Are you serious?" I'm like, no, I'm kidding. It was a joke. Because she didn't understand my sense of humor. And now after 10 years of being together, she's figured out my sense of humor. Still doesn't like it, but she has. If I was in a company of New Englanders with my personality and their personality, and we were killing it, and we were crushing it, to use today's terminologies, and sales were growing, and I was leading the team, and then I join a new company, and they expect me to be able to do the same thing, but this group is from a different region of the country, who are a lot more polite. They really hold back more on their feelings. They're not sarcastic at all and funny. Well, I might not do anything successful in this company because I'm going to rub everybody the wrong way. But if I have the self-awareness to realize what I brought to the table, what my environment helped me bring to the table, and at the same time, what kind of environment I'm walking into in my new company, then I'm going to have a much better success rate of doing good things and making wins for my company. So here's the first thing you need to do. If you don't know if you have self-awareness, feel free to call me. I will gladly sit down with you for 15 minutes, ask you a whole bunch of questions, and be able to figure out pretty quickly if you think you have self-awareness or if you really do. Because it is something you can learn if you're aware of it and you're trying to. But when you're talking to people, if you make eye contact with people and you talk with them, it's pretty easy to figure out if you're turning them off or turning them on. And I don't mean that inappropriately. I mean if they're actually engaging with you or trying to get away from you. And we've all worked with someone like Bill Lumbergh from The Office, right? Where when they come out of their office, everyone's just like, oh gosh, I don't want to talk to this guy because he's terrible and he annoys me. Or if you're talking to people and you're very quick and you're like, oh, I gotta go. Obviously you're trying to get rid of them. But if people are doing that to you and you don't realize it, you need to figure that stuff out, because that is what is going to drive you to be successful. It's all about the culture fit that you're joining, and self-awareness helps you figure out where you fit in that culture to figure out if you're going to be successful, okay? There's a great book that I love. It's called Culture Code by Daniel Coyle. I would absolutely recommend that book for you if you're trying to figure out how cultures work together and why you can take these polar opposite people, put them in this organization and have them excel above groups of highly paid, highly trained people and things like that. So hopefully that helps you with interviewing. Self-awareness is key, and that is actually going to be really flavored throughout these questions. So now we're getting to the Q&A. I do have some questions already lined up here, but now feel free to push send if you've been typing questions. Don't worry, push send. I will make sure I get to them, and I always prioritize those questions. But Bill in Cyprus, first, so Kristen, I'm 51 and I feel like I'm perhaps being overlooked because of my age. Ageism is a real thing. Do you have any advice for older folks looking? Yes, first of all, depends what role you are in, Kristen. 100% I agree with what role you're in, okay? And if you are a senior leveled individual, people care about age in a good way. when I was hiring the CEO for various organizations, they wanted someone who had experience. But if you're doing a job, in all honesty, Kristen, if you're doing a job that you don't need experience for, then it's going to be a challenge. And it's not because they don't want you. It's because they might be paying you more than they could pay someone else to do the same job. So my advice to you is to make sure that your skills are stronger than an entry level or a younger person. And feel free, Kristen, to give me some context here. I'm happy to try to and also feel free to give me a call. And I would love to talk to you specifically, Kristen, just because there are so many more questions around follow-up questions to get your specific story. But ageism is real, 100%. But most of the time I see it on the hiring process, less than once you're in the organization. And then once you're in the organization, you need to make sure that the skills that you're bringing are valuable for that company. If you're a bare minimal person, Kristen, if you're just doing the bare minimum every single day, and that's my job description, it might be an ageism thing, but it might also be a personality thing. If you're always going above and beyond, if you're always working, sometimes it's an energy level thing too, to be completely honest with you. Sometimes the culture fit just isn't right. I've worked in cultures or for clients who are very methodical in the way they do things. And then I've also worked for cultures that are very fast paced and upbeat and high energy. And they just said, look, I don't care how old the person is, but I need someone that's high energy. So culture fits part of it too. I hope that helps you a little bit, but Kristen, do not hesitate. Instant message me here on Facebook. Send me a message. You and I can chat offline about this. I'd love to talk to you more because that's a really interesting question and I've dealt with it a lot. All right. Bill in Cyprus. I have been with a company for over 10 years. I'm expecting a promotion since February. But with COVID-19, I don't think it's going to happen. My frustration with my company has been an all-time high. What should I do to evaluate when I'm going or staying? So here's the deal. If Bill has been with the company for 10 years, he obviously knows the company pretty well, okay? I have to say, Bill, if you've glass ceilinged, and he and I talked about this a little bit this week already, but if you've glass ceilinged in a role, you know it, and COVID-19 is independent of that. If you truly believe you were going to get promoted, but it got delayed because of COVID-19, I wouldn't get frustrated, but I got to imagine the frustration is deeper than just COVID-19 and deeper than being a stalled promotion after 10 years. So you know best if you glass ceilinged. Obviously, if you're looking for a new job, you are going to make sure first that you have something lined up. Secondly, you're going to make sure that the grass truly is greener on the other side. Don't make an emotional decision while you're in the middle of an emotional situation. Sleep on it, think about it. Doesn't sound like you're in any rush to make a move, so I would say that. But make sure you're being fairly treated, make sure you're being fairly compensated, because what we talked about a couple weeks ago too, right, is the compensation side of this whole thing. We don't really know where the compensation is. We don't know how much it's dropped. If you haven't taken a pay cut yet, Bill, maybe all of your competitors have. And you might go to a role that's senior and title, but less money. And then you're expecting that when the market rebounds in a V or a U, that you're going to get more money. But guess what? There's 10 million, 40 million people looking for a job. The paradigm is shift now, right? We went from being in a candidate-centric system to now a company-centric system. The companies have all the advantage right now. So my last thing I'll say is about evaluating new opportunities. Just like buying a stock. You want to buy a stock on the way up, right? You don't want to join a company when it's on the way down. If it's in decline, yeah, there's an opportunity you're going to get laid off. But even less so, there's going to be less opportunity for growth, okay? If a company's in decline, they might still be around in 20 years, but you might still be in the same position. Or you might be taking on more and more responsibility with less and less team members and things like that. So just be sure that as you are evaluating opportunities, you're evaluating it on the growth and where you want to be 5 years ago. Now, I often will tell people it's okay to take a step back, a half a step back, if you think 5 years from now it's going to be 3 steps forward, whereas if you stayed where you are right now, you're going to be where you are right now. You need to look at the big picture. Robert in League City, I'm just getting a call for the interview. Oh, great. Well, congratulations. Yeah, Kristen, let's talk about that. I'm glad to chat with you about that for sure. Okay, so Robert in League City. I have a close friend. This is a very specific question, but I'm going to generalize it to help everybody. I've got a very close friend. He's a CEO of a company. He sent me the recruiting firm that they use for a role they're filling inside the organization. After reviewing the position description, I realized that I'm not qualified for the role, and the recruiting company is going to call me tomorrow. What should I tell them? Now, I had a follow-up question for him, and it is if this is a role he wants. When I asked him if this was a role he wanted, he said, well, not really. I'm not really passionate about it. So that helps shape the answer. And there's always a follow-up question. When you're interviewing, there's going to be follow-up questions, so lead them down towards those questions you want them to answer or you want to answer. But in Robert's case, doesn't really want the job, right? Now, I've been an executive research recruiter, retained search for a long time. I understand that when my client sends me a candidate to interview, often they're not the fit. Because here's what happens, right? Client sits down with me and says, Tony, we are looking for the purple unicorn. Here's what we need them to have, all of this stuff. So we go searching for the purple unicorn, the 1 out of a million haystack needle kind of guys or gals. Then a month later, 2 weeks later, the client sends me an average Joe. Robert, I'm not saying you're an average Joe, but he just sends me somebody that doesn't fit the job description. And had I known that that person would have been acceptable, I would have had thousands of people to call. So now I'm getting ready to call Robert because I realize, Robert, that you're the friend of the CEO and you're the friend of my client, and I have to let you down gently. All this is going through my mind before I pick up the phone to call you, Robert. So how you should handle the conversation is you immediately, when you answer the phone call, go, hey, Tony, thanks so much for giving me a call. Just so you know, I just got this job description today, yesterday. I don't think I'm the right fit for this role. However, since we both slotted 15 minutes to talk, could I pick your brain a little bit about my background? I recognize you have a lot of jobs that come across your desk that you think I might be a good fit for. What has Robert just done? Robert has just demonstrated the highest level of self-awareness you can demonstrate and humility. He is not trying to sell himself to the recruiter who's already stressed out. I promise you, if I was calling Robert, I am stressed out because I've already, in my mind, said, I need to figure out how not to hire Robert. I need to figure out how to let him down where it's not going to come back to the client and the client's going to be mad at me. And I also need to figure out how to coach Robert so that he realizes this isn't the right job for him. There's so much that's going behind my mind before I call him. And the moment Robert calls me, I take a big breath. Or the moment before I call Robert, I take a breath. I call Robert. I'm stressed out. Robert says, relax. I'm not your guy. Robert and I are now on the same side. Robert's now an advocate for me. I'm now an advocate for Robert. I now realize that Robert, with one sentence before the interview even started, has demonstrated such a high level of self-awareness that I immediately trust him. And I know that if I send him a job a month from now, if he's not a fit for it, guess what? He's still going to tell me, which means I'm going to send Robert a whole bunch of job opportunities because I know he's not going to waste my time or my client's time. So that's my advice for Robert, because Robert knows the CEO. But most of us don't know the CEO, okay? So what do we do in those situations? And my advice is very, very different. If you get an interview, it's not going to come because the CEO recommended you. If you get an interview, you need to take that interview. You don't need to disqualify yourself because somebody is calling you because they see something in your resume, not because somebody told them to. If somebody's calling you to interview you, you need to say, hey, look, when they say, when they ask you, why do you think you're a fit for this role? Hopefully 5 minutes in after you've established a little bit of rapport, you then say, look, I'm not sure I am. I will tell you, I've gotten more job offers because I said I'm not sure I'm a fit for the role than trying to oversell myself. And I've seen more of my clients get job offers because they were honest. They're like, I'm not really sure I am. Here's my strengths. Here's what I like doing. I think that correlates with this role, but I'm not sure on this other side. So you tell me, honestly. I mean, again, humility, self-awareness, that is key. So when you do that sort of things, you get to see more people in the interview process. And I'm a big believer that you need to see as many people in that interview process because by sheer math, let's just say a company is only seeing 5 people for a job. Then everything else being equal, you have a 20% chance of getting the job, 1 out of 5. However, if you meet with the recruiter and then the hiring manager and then maybe the director and maybe being a VP, you've now met with 4 people in the value chain. And chances are each one of those people are going to hire 1 or 2 or 3 people this year. So you went from interviewing for 1 job with a recruiter to now making an impression on 4 people, which might actually have 1, 2, or 3 additional jobs available underneath them this year or next year, which means now there's 12 opportunities that you've made an impression for that might actually help you a month from now, 2 months from now, because they might say, you know what, Sandy, she wasn't right for this job, but don't we have something in Q3 that might be a fit for Sandy? because you showed your self-awareness. All right, we are running long on time here. I have a few more questions that I can get to. However, I think I'm going to call it this. I will, again, one more time here. If you do have a question you want me to answer, please send it to me. Kristen, I look forward to connecting with you one-on-one. And I think that's everything for this week. So next week, I won't be doing this, unfortunately. I'm sorry, but I will be back the following week. I'll be meeting with a client on site for one of my corporate clients. So I'll be doing some interview coaching for their team there. But if you enjoyed what you just heard, please like my Facebook page. Please follow me on Instagram. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. They're all by the same name, Hired How to Get the Job. Also, please post and share this to anyone you think in your network who might benefit from it. Remember, my stuff on YouTube is this week's, last week's, and all my content is there. So if you think this was valuable. And lastly, if you're currently looking for your next career role, please feel free to reach out to me so I can show you how to get the job. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.